You've been walking through life with a quiet strength, carrying burdens no one sees, answering to responsibilities no one thanks you for, standing in gaps no one acknowledges. You've learned to smile when your heart was aching, to give when your hands were empty, and to believe when nothing around you looked hopeful. And somewhere in the middle of all that perseverance, in the middle of serving others, praying for everyone else, and showing up even when your soul felt weary, you started to wonder, does anyone see me? Does God even remember I'm here? Let me tell you this with full authority, you are not forgotten. Not by heaven, not by God, and not by purpose. There is nothing about you, not your tears, not your trials, not even your silent prayers whispered in the dark, that has gone unnoticed. You may have felt invisible, but you've never been unseen. You may have been overlooked by people, but not by the one who matters most. Sometimes God allows us to walk through seasons where we feel hidden not because He's punishing us, but because He's preparing us. You weren't buried, you were planted, and when you're planted, no one sees the roots growing underneath. No one claps for your obedience in the dark. No one cheers for the inner work, the healing, the discipline, the humility. But God is doing more in those unseen places than the world could ever comprehend. He's strengthening you in private for a purpose that will be revealed in public. You've been growing in silence, you've been developing in shadows, and even though it felt like nothing was moving, you were being molded. And sometimes God will strip everything away just to prove that your faith wasn't rooted in what you had, but in who He is. It's easy to believe when everything is working, but it takes courage to trust when nothing makes sense. And you, woman of God, you've done just that. You've trusted, you've held on, you've remained faithful. Don't let the silence fool you. God has been closer in the silence than you ever realized. He's been walking with you through every disappointment, holding you through every heartbreak, shielding you from things you didn't even know were coming. And yes, He heard you every time you cried yourself to sleep, every time you worshipped with a broken heart, every time you whispered, God, I don't understand, but I trust you. You see, heaven doesn't operate on human timelines. You may think you're late, that your time passed you by, that someone else got your opportunity, that maybe God skipped over your name. But divine timing is never early and never late, it's right on time. And there are some things God couldn't give you back then because they would have crushed you. There are doors that didn't open, not because you weren't worthy, but because He was protecting your process. You thought He was ignoring you, but He was insulating you, setting you apart, preparing the right people, the right atmosphere, the right moment. So don't despise your quiet season. Don't look down on the season where you feel unseen. Even a seed needs darkness to grow. God has been watching your every move, the way you love, the way you forgive, the way you keep going when quitting would have been easier. Heaven has been taking notes. You've been passing tests you didn't even know you were taking. And now you're stepping into the season that all of that prepared you for. You are not forgotten because God doesn't forget His promises. He didn't start a good work in you to leave it unfinished. He didn't carry you through storms just to abandon you on dry land. He didn't pull you out of the pit so you could live a life beneath your calling. No, you are on heaven's radar. You've been marked for purpose, anointed for assignment, chosen for impact. So even when your phone is silent, your inbox is empty, your name isn't being called, know this. God is speaking, your name in rooms you haven't even entered yet. He's aligning favor, shifting circumstances, stirring hearts, all with you in mind. And when the moment comes, when the door opens, when the light hits what was developed in the dark, it won't be a coincidence. It'll be divine fulfillment because, woman of God, you were never forgotten. You were just being refined. You were just being readied, and now the silence is breaking and your season is calling. You thought the breaking was the end of you. You thought it was punishment, that somehow all the pieces falling apart meant you failed or that you missed your moment. But what if I told you that the breaking wasn't to destroy you? It was to birth something inside you that couldn't come any other way. What if I told you that the pain you endured, the losses you suffered, the betrayal you survived, all of it was God's way of positioning you, not punishing you? See, birth doesn't happen in ease. It happens in pressure. It happens in stretching. It happens when something that's been forming in secret is finally ready to come forth. And the only way out is through a process that feels like it might kill you before it blesses you. And just like that, some of the most powerful things God is trying to birth in your life require a breaking that hurts before it heals. Because there are some things in you, strength, purpose, oil, that only come from being pressed. You didn't cry those tears for nothing. You didn't survive that season for it to mean nothing. God was breaking what was comfortable so he could birth what was called. You were never meant to stay in that place, in that mindset, in that version of yourself. So he broke the pattern. He disrupted the rhythm. He allowed the storm not to harm you, but to reveal you. He let it break so something deeper, something higher, something more eternal could rise from the rubble. You see, breaking seasons will show you who you really are. When you can't fake strong anymore, when your hands are empty and your heart is bruised and all you have left is a quiet yes. That's where transformation begins, because when you get to the end of yourself, that's when the power of God steps in. That's when you stop relying on what used to work and start leaning into what's being awakened. That's when the shell of who you used to be can no longer hold who you're becoming. You had to be broken so you'd stop depending on things that were never meant to carry you. You had to lose what you thought you couldn't live without so God could show you who he's always been, your source, your strength, your sustainer. That breaking was not the end. It was the womb. You were not being buried. You were being born again into your purpose, into your power, into the woman God already saw long before the pain ever touched you. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it looked like loss. Yes, it shook everything familiar, but look at you still here. Still breathing, still believing. That's not weakness, that's evidence of birth. You're stepping out of what crushed you and stepping into what was conceived in the middle of it. You were carrying something even when you didn't know it. Your obedience, your endurance, your worship in the middle of your wounds. All of that was pushing life into purpose. People saw the fall, but they didn't see what was forming. They saw your tears, but they didn't hear your prayers. They counted you out, but they didn't realize God was just getting started. Because what comes after the breaking is always greater than what came before it. When God breaks something, he multiplies it. When he breaks a person, he anoints them. When he allows you to be shattered, he is preparing to pour oil from every crack. So don't curse the season that broke you, because it birthed something holy. It birthed boldness. It birthed discernment. It birthed the version of you that isn't trying to fit in anymore, but is ready to rise in truth. You didn't go through that pain just to bounce back. You went through it to be birthed into someone new. To step into a purpose that only your scars could validate. To speak with a power that only survivors understand. There is weight to your words now. There is oil on your hands. There is fire in your bones, not because life was kind to you, but because God was faithful through it all. The breaking was never meant to shame you. It was meant to shape you, so you could carry glory, so you could walk in authority, so you could rise without apology, fully aware of what it costs to become who you are. And when you look back, not with regret, but with revelation, you'll see it clearly. That season didn't break you down, it broke you open. So what was planted could finally push through. So the woman you were always meant to be could finally rise. Because the breaking was never for your ending. The breaking was for your birthing. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she has to decide whether she's going to keep chasing the reflection of someone else's calling or rise in the fullness of her own. And for too long, too many women of God have been shrinking, molding, reshaping, and contorting themselves to fit into images that were never meant for them. Looking left and right instead of looking within. But this is the season where you no longer rise in imitation, you rise in identity. You don't need to copy her walk, mimic her voice, dress like her, talk like her, or lave her story. Your oil doesn't flow through imitation, it flows through authenticity. The anointing doesn't fall on a mask. It falls on who you really are. You were not created to echo someone else's purpose. You were created to speak with your own sound. And until you make peace with your own voice, you will never unlock the power that's been hidden inside it. See, the world teaches us to compare, to compete, to conform, but heaven never told you to compete with what's already been created. God's blueprint for your life is original. Your gifts, your story, your struggle, your scars, they all make up the divine signature of your identity. And trying to wear someone else's armor will only slow you down in the battle that was custom made for you to win. You weren't called to fit in someone else's design. You were called to stand in your own divine DNA. You might not look like the women who seem to get the applause. You might not talk like the ones with the big platforms. You might not feel qualified, polished, or perfect. But God didn't ask for perfection. He asked for obedience. He didn't ask you to be impressive. He asked you to be real. He knew exactly who you were when he called you. He factored in your flaws. He considered your past, and still he said you don't need to water yourself down to be accepted. You don't need to shrink your light so someone else doesn't feel uncomfortable. You don't need to edit your calling to fit someone else's expectations. Because the moment you start performing instead of standing, you lose the power of your identity, and the world doesn't need more performers. It needs truth carriers, women who rise in who they truly are, women who don't apologize for being different. Women who walk in rooms and shift the atmosphere because they're not trying to be liked, they're trying to be light. The danger of imitation is it robs you of intimacy with yourself and with God. When you're trying to be someone else, you stop listening to your own spirit. You silence the voice God gave you and start echoing voices that were never meant to speak over your destiny. But when you return to who you really are, when you stop trying to blend in and start owning what God gave you, something powerful happens. You walk with freedom, you lead with conviction, you speak with weight. God didn't give her your story for a reason. He didn't give her your voice. He didn't give her your exact struggle, your unique journey, or your divine assignment. That belongs to you, and what's yours can't be duplicated. It can't be stolen. It can't be outshined. Because it's heaven-breathed, and you'll never discover the fullness of your purpose by pretending to be someone else. Identity isn't something you perform, it's something you live. And yes, it takes courage to be yourself in a world that constantly tells you you're not enough unless you're someone else. It takes strength to silence the noise and lean into your own rhythm. It takes faith to say, I may not fit the mold, but I'm still chosen. But hear this, God doesn't anoint who you pretend to be. He anoints who you are, so when you choose to rise in identity, you give God permission to move fully in your life. You stop holding back. You stop filtering yourself. You stop delaying your destiny. You weren't made to echo. You were made to resonate. Your life carries a sound. Your obedience carries a weight. Your yes, as you, not the version you try to perform, breaks chains. It unlocks doors, it inspires freedom in others, because when you rise in identity, you give other women permission to do the same. You become a living testimony that freedom is found not in fitting in, but in standing firm. This is the season to drop the imitation. To let go of the pressure to duplicate someone else's journey, to stop measuring your worth by someone else's success. This is your moment to rise in who you truly are, bold, anointed, set apart, and fully aware that what God placed inside you was never meant to be copied. It was meant to be carried by you. There's a call going out in this hour, not for women who are just willing to follow the crowd, but for those who are ready to rise and lead. And not lead for the sake of power or title or recognition, but lead because the assignment demands it. Lead because the next generation needs it. Lead because the mantle has been placed on your life, and it's time to stop playing small when God has called you to stand tall. You weren't created to stay in the background forever. You weren't called to keep watching others step into their purpose while you silence your own voice out of fear, doubt, or false humility. There's a difference between being humble and hiding, and what some call humility is really just fear dressed up in church clothes. But God is calling you out of that. He's calling you to rise into visibility, into responsibility, into leadership, not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. There's something in you the world needs. There's something in your story, your scars, your strength that heaven wants to use. You may not feel ready. You may still be battling self-doubt, still wrestling with your past, still waiting for some kind of confirmation. But what if the confirmation is the fire you feel in your spirit every time you hear someone else doing what you know you're called to do? What if the confirmation is the fact that the idea won't leave you alone? The dream won't die, the vision keeps knocking. That's not coincidence, that's calling. Leadership is not about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about having the courage to speak when no one else will. It's about showing up when others walk away. It's about carrying vision, even when the weight of it stretches you beyond your comfort zone. It's about choosing integrity when compromise would be easier. It's about saying yes when it costs you something. You don't need a platform to lead. You don't need followers to lead. You just need to be faithful where you are with what you have right now. There are people watching you who may never tell you they are. Daughters, sisters, friends, co-workers, young girls in the shadows, they're watching how you handle pressure, how you respond to opposition, how you navigate uncertainty. And your life is teaching them what's possible. Your obedience is showing them how to move even when the ground shakes. Your courage is giving them permission to rise. You are leading already, even if you don't realize it. So why not do it boldly? Why not do it intentionally? Don't wait for someone to hand you permission. Don't wait to be discovered or picked or approved. God already picked you. The moment He gave you the vision, the burden, the assignment, that was the confirmation. You are the leader you've been waiting for. And this world is desperate for leadership rooted in truth, in compassion, in boldness, and in righteousness. Not perfection, not performance, but presence, real, raw, and surrendered presence. Leadership is uncomfortable. It stretches you, it exposes your weaknesses, it forces you to confront your fears. But it also unlocks something powerful in you, the realization that you don't need to have it all together to walk in purpose. You just need to be willing to walk anyway. You just need to take the first step, and then the next. And then the next, one act of obedience at a time. You've followed long enough. You've sat on the sidelines long enough. You've admired others long enough. Now it's your turn. Your voice matters. Your insight matters. Your perspective, your anointing, your presence, all of it matters. Don't let comparison silence you. Don't let insecurity chain you. Don't let fear convince you that leadership is for someone else. It's for you, because God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called, and you've been called to rise, called to shift atmospheres, called to break generational patterns, called to walk in wisdom, called to lead with love, called to bring light where there's been darkness. You are not just a woman of faith, you are a woman of influence. And it's time to stop minimizing what God has magnified within you. So, lead in your home with strength. Lead in your circle with integrity. Lead in your community with courage. Lead in your ministry, in your business, in your vision, wherever God has placed you. Lead. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it every day, but because the call won't let you sit still any longer. There's a world waiting for the version of you that's not afraid to take her place, not afraid to make decisions, not afraid to carry the mantle you followed faithfully. Now, woman of God, it's time to rise and lead. Woman of God, this is not just another moment, this is your divine awakening. Everything you've endured, every tear you cried, every quiet victory when no one was watching, it was all leading to this. You are not forgotten. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not here by accident. Heaven has chosen you for such a time as this. You were broken but not destroyed because the breaking was for the birthing. You were hidden but never abandoned because your identity was being refined, not erased. And now, no more shrinking, no more settling, no more waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay to rise. You are rising in identity, not imitation, in authority, not insecurity, in obedience, not performance. You are rising to lead not for applause, but because your assignment demands it, because the world needs the fire God placed in you. Not a copy, not a shadow, you, so stand up, speak up, step forward. You don't have to be perfect, just present. You don't have to know it all, just move when he calls. The time is now. The mantle is yours. The season is here. Woman of God, it's your season to rise.